The first session of the day, a fireside chat on reimagining the future, leading change with responsible business. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce our first speaker for today, Julie Sweet, CEO, Accenture. Julie is Chief Executive Officer of Accenture and serves on the company's board of directors. Outside of Accenture, she's a leader on topics including innovation, technology's impact on business and inclusion, and diversity. She was named #1 on Fortune's Most Powerful Women in Business. The chair for this session is Debjani Ghosh, President NASSCOM. Debjani, the stage is all yours.
Welcome to NASSCOM Technology and Leadership Forum, Julie. It is such a privilege to have you with us today. And before we dive into the topic of the day, I'm going to take the liberty to tell you a small little story that involves you, but that you do not know about. So whenever I get some time, I like to spend it mentoring young girls, women, etc. And one of these sessions was towards the end of 2019. Around that time, your announcement had just come out. And I usually start these sessions by getting them to write out what is their biggest dream. And then we get into a discussion about dreams and ambition, etc. So that day I started it the same way. I asked them to write out what is their biggest dream. And then I told them, take that piece of paper and crumple it or tear it into a million pieces and just throw it away. And I had so many confused faces looking at me saying, what happened to her? And I was like, just throw it away, because our dream benchmark, our dream landscape has just got totally disrupted. And then I told them your story. I told them about your news. And I said, do you know that the world's biggest tech giant has a new CEO? And it's a she. And these are underprivileged girls, so they may not have access to all the news. So I could see the eyes sort of growing bigger and bigger because they have heard about Accenture. And we got into a discussion. And by the end of that session, every single girl tore up the dream that she had written in the beginning of the class and rewrote a dream. And Julie, I have to say it was one of the most inspiring conversations I have had, because I was blown away with their power to think big if they just, were told that it's okay to think big. So I call it the Julie effect, and I've been dying to share that story with you. So I'm so thankful I got this opportunity to do so.
Oh, Debjani, that really touches me. So thank you for sharing. But also just listening to you is how amazing for those young girls to have you there and to be able to look at someone who is also leading an incredible organization where it's always been led by men. But even more importantly, that you were spending the time with them, right? And they will remember not my name, but they will remember that moment that you gave them. And so that's really inspiring to me. We have Rekha Menon, who's our leader in India, who is she's actually been someone who mentored me when I first came to Accenture. And I know that she is similarly very dedicated, not just to women, but all to all forms of diversity. We do a lot in Accenture. But at the end, it's those moments with leaders who take the time that I think really make a difference. So thank you for sharing that. But more importantly, thank you for doing that for those young girls. I mean, I look at my own life and I had a lot of those moments that helped me get here because someone took time, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
You can't substitute that.
Absolutely. And that also takes us to our topic today. You rightly said that we have a golden opportunity to rebuild the future together. And as we rebuild the future, we have to ensure it's better, right? And one of the things I think we as an industry have to get right is ensuring that it is more responsible. So let's get into that a bit, Julie. But before I talk about building a responsible business, I do want to ask you a little personal question, which is, the pandemic has impacted all of us, each and every one of us, in so many different ways. I think it's brought about some fundamental changes in how we think, our worldview. So, as a leader, what is your, if you have to sum up 2020 in a few words, what is your key takeaway? And what did it mean for you? Any changes that it brought about in you?
Well, thanks. It's a great question, and maybe I think about it in a couple of different ways. If you just think of it in terms of as organizations, and certainly as a CEO of a company with over 500,000 people that's very global, I think it's taught us all about the possibilities that sort of to some extent to dream bigger, because all at once the entire world had to change literally overnight. And that was never thought possible. Like, no one would have said, wait, the entire world could change their behavior, right? And so, as a CEO, you can actually point to something that's so extraordinary, right? And then each of our companies, of course, had incredible stories, but it's the combination of how we each adjusted, but also what became possible in the world. And I think it's very inspiring that more can be done faster and bigger. And it's not just words, right? Because we anticipated. So, and I think there's a quote that I like that I have in my house that if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough, right? And it's, when you think about organizations, things are possible that weren't possible before, simply by seeing what happened into the world. So that's how I kind of think of it as a CEO. And then, very personally, one of the things that I think has been the best part of a very difficult situation are just the connections that we've made as people. Right, the fact that I know much more about, like, does someone have a dog, or what's their child situation, or I'll know, hey, wait, you've changed rooms. There's a humanity, and I would say Accenture was a place that we really, we've always prided ourselves on thinking about people from both a personal and professional level. But the pandemic, that shared experience, but also the necessity, has, I think, taken it to a totally different level that I really want us all, not just at Accenture, but collectively, I think will change. And it's certainly changed, myself and how I think about, others. And I think that's the really great upside for what has been such a terrible situation for so many people.
Absolutely. Cannot agree more with you. Julie, you're one of the biggest advocates for responsible business. Right? But a lot of CEOs are still debating about whether responsible business and profitable business are opposite to each other, or do they go hand in hand? Is it an and story, or is it an or story, either or story? So if you could share a little bit about, why do you care so much about building responsible businesses? Why is it important? And do CEOs have to choose between profitable business and responsible business?
Well, that's a great question. Let me start with your second. So I'm gonna give you a prediction that we're making. So back in 2013, we were the first company that said every business would be a digital business. Mm-hmm. And I remember it because everyone argued with us at the time, like lots and lots of industry, like, we're not a digital business. And of course, it's clear that we were right. And today what our prediction is that every business will be a sustainable business. And by sustainable, we mean that in the broad sense. And why do I start there? Because it really goes to the heart of your question about, do you have to choose? Is we believe that being a sustainable business it makes you actually more profitable and more successful. And we just published research that said that those companies who have combined sustainability into their business strategy are 2.5 times more successful than those have not. Now, it's still small in terms of those who've actually successfully done that, but the data is showing that. And of course, the data backs up what we know, right? Is sustainable businesses are ones where you are constantly reskilling your people and that of course makes you more agile, more ability to adjust. Sustainable businesses are more efficient from an energy perspective. They're more efficient in how they use resources, which, by the way, those efficiencies go into productivity, into costs. And we all exist and have been reminded by that in a world where, the pandemic reminds just how connected we are and how much health matters. And I think the big focus on climate is because what seemed unthinkable came true in the pandemic. And you start to look at the climate issues with a different lens in terms of the potential, and so we really believe, right, that every business will become a sustainable business, and the opportunity as a company is to differentiate, to get there first and be more successful. And that financial performance comes because employees care about it and customers care about it, and there's an effect on the bottom line. And we certainly have seen that. We're very proud that we're leading the industry in our own commitments, for example, around climate, right? We're going to be, by 2025, net carbon emissions will be zero. 100% recycling of our waste, and a significant reduction in our water usage. Something in India, we're already recycling our water. We're at 75% recycling of our waste, right? We're making huge progress in using renewables in our centers. And we know that not only do our clients care about it, but we're attracting great people who want to be a part of a company that has these kinds of values. And so the idea of both delivering value and having values is really important, as we think about our future.
Yeah, absolutely. I cannot agree more with you. And, one of those values that we in the tech industry think a lot about is, are we building technology responsibly? And is technology getting used responsibly, right? I mean, at the end of the day, tech is neither good nor bad. It's us, and we decide. So, as an industry, when we start thinking about being responsible about technology, could you share your thoughts on uh, who where does the buck stop? Who is responsible? Is it government? Is it industry? Is it a shared responsibility? How does it play out ultimately?
That's a great question, and I think that the clear answer is that it's a shared responsibility, because most of the things that we need to do together to be more responsible require more than one party, right? So, for example, if you think about reskilling, right, the ability to connect with educational institutions to make sure that kids coming out of their lower education have the skills so it's more easy to reskill. Those are things that we have to do together. When you think about climate change, almost inevitably you need a government, private, public partnership for aspects of it. But I think if the lens is on what does our industry have a responsibility to do, is I start with the fact that we are massively accelerating among our clients in digital transformation and the investment in technology. And so there is a moment right now where we can really help companies understand the potential of technology, the need to embed responsibility, and as an industry have an impact when all of this investment is happening. And I think that's why this conversation is so important, is for us to think about this as a responsibility. I mean, all of our members, of NASScom, care very much about the responsible use of technology, and the ability to have those conversations with our clients at a moment when the investment is massively accelerating is really important, and something we can be proud of as we do it.
Absolutely. I think that, honestly, for NASScom, that's job one. Given that we're the custodian of the tech industry in India, that is a key priority for us. And as you're having these conversations with global CEOs, do you believe that they are getting it? They're giving it the due importance? Are there any best practices that CEOs are looking at to build a more responsible business?
Yeah, so first of all, I do believe that CEOs are getting it and the commitment is very high. And that's why we make this, with such confidence, our prediction that every business will be a sustainable business, because there is a clear business case for it, there's a societal case for it, and we see that commitment. So I think, that's a very positive and optimistic look for the future. And I think, again, if you go back to how our industry can help from a practical perspective is, I don't think it's a lack of commitment, but you have to have a path. And so the more that we as companies can ensure that we are thinking about responsible business as we have these conversations, the better. And this is why, at Accenture, we're really leading with this being, a very clear part of what we do as a company, because part of what our clients need is the ability to get there, right?
Absolutely. In fact, one of the very interesting conversations I had with the CEO on this topic was, what are you willing to walk away from? When you start defining responsible business, where do you draw the line? And maybe you could talk a little bit about what is Accenture doing because you are such a big believer in this. I mean, what are the changes you're bringing about within Accenture to ensure that you are building responsible as well as a sustainable business?
So first of all, we've made commitments both with respect to the climate, but also, as you know, we do massive reskilling, right? We invest nearly $1 billion a year, millions, literally millions of training hours, which is all part of being a sustainable, our commitments to sustainability, our commitments to the community. And so this is just how we operate. And we've been doing that for many, many years now. What I would say is that what's also, though, important is the changes that we've made to ensure that we're bringing this thinking and our ability to reskill, for example, to our clients. And take the Best Buy example. Really proud. Here's an opportunity. Best Buy is a leader in digital. They have announced that they were creating 1,000 new jobs in technology. And they're working with us to make sure that, first of all, a big percentage, about 30%, are diverse, right? And they're working with us to actually invest in skilling of their people, right? And they're doing so all as a part of the fact that they need to continue to be a digital leader and continue to have innovation. And it's those stories that bring to life how it's not only you don't have to make a choice, right? But that you can make it absolutely part of it. And by the way, what a great company to work for, and so as you think about attracting the best people, right? All of the data shows that employees want to work for employers who have these values. Customers want to buy from companies that have these value. And I can, cite you all the recent studies that we've put out. But of course, it also just makes sense, right?
Absolutely. I think the way I would sum up what you said is, trust, or the ability to trust, is becoming the new currency of our world. It's what's driving decisions, whether I want to work for you, whether I want to work with you. It all beginning to depend on how much do I trust you. And I think that is just such an important advice for CEOs to start thinking about. On that note, Julie, if you could tell CEOs what are some of the imperatives that they must think about as they are building out their playbook for their businesses, what would the top 3 or 4 things be?
Maybe I'll focus on 2 things. First is that it's really important to integrate the thinking around these topics at the CEO table. In other words, it's important that your thoughts on sustainability, the thoughts on reskilling, what you're doing in the community, and your business strategy come together in one place. I think, there's a legacy that sometimes in organizations, particularly those that are maybe not focused, like, so say, not somebody in energy, sometimes puts these things in different parts. They might put it under corporate citizenship, or it might be sort of a sideline. And because there is so much investment and change going on in organizations, and it's going very fast, as a CEO, you need to really think very clearly about how do I bring those things together so that it's not an afterthought, right? You don't say, wait, we've made this decision, but we forgot to talk to the people who think about things like this. So I think that's super important. Then the second piece is also being able to communicate clearly the totality of what you're doing. So just take, for example, we're working with a utility in India, and we're helping them extend electricity to remote regions. So of course, this is their business, right? So they, it's important that they do so. We're helping them doing it digitally, but the impact on the people's lives of being able to access electricity, the impact on the decrease of fossil fuels that have much worse emissions because of the electricity, or it's in the total, right? And so being able to articulate that really, really clearly in order to attract more talent to your organization, because they see, how you're living your values. And what I find is a lot of young people don't always make the connections between the business and these values. And as CEOs, we have to help them. So for example, when we have good earnings, I'll talk about how, if we don't actually make profit, we can't invest in programs like, we've reskilled 3 million people in our communities, or help them get a job, right? That there's a connection to that piece, right? And so like really simple things like when we talk, why does it, shareholders, people are individual families. And so when we are delivering a better price to our shareholders and value, it's actually impacting people. It's those simple things that I think as CEOs, we sometimes have to connect the dots. And that's why when we talk about serving all of our stakeholders, making it real is very, very important. And thinking about it from the lens of both a young person and someone who's been at your organization longer, because I think the values are the same, but sometimes it's the newer people and trying to attract talent and being very clear about it.
It's been a fascinating conversation, and my biggest takeaway, Julie, everything you talk about, the importance of people in enabling or in achieving any goal that a company sets out is just, it just comes out so strongly in everything that you say. For me, that's the biggest takeaway. Julie, this is one conversation that we will never have enough time for. We just can continue to talk about on this topic, and I do hope that you will give us the opportunity to have a second round of discussion sometime very soon, and hopefully in person once we are all done with the pandemic. But thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you so much for sharing these perspectives with us. Just fascinating listening to you. And as you said, we have to keep it real. And I honestly believe we don't have a choice. We have to do the right thing. This is one chance that we are getting to rebuild the future. So we should do it right. Thank you so much, Julie, for taking the time. Really loved our conversation.
Well, thank you very much for having it. I'm going to leave you with one last thought, because I so believe in what you're saying and people. As we announced earlier this, just a few months ago, that our purpose is to deliver on the promise of technology and human ingenuity. And that's what I think about absolutely every day. And that's what we try to make sure that everyone thinks about at Accenture. And I think it really captures what you just said. It's all about people, and it's all about the potential of the good that we can do as an industry in the world. So thanks for having the conversation. Thanks for helping lead us. And I look forward to our next one.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie. And Shreya, back to you.
Thank you, Devjani and Julie, for a wonderful start to day 3 of NTLF 2021. The highlights for me in this session were there are possibilities of dreaming bigger. If greater opportunities beckon, don't be afraid of tearing up your present dreams into a million pieces and write out fresh ones that are infinitely bigger and bolder, and that'll take you to your destination faster. The pandemic also gave us an opportunity to share experiences, and we were able to make human connections at an altogether different level. Responsible businesses or profitable businesses. It doesn't have to be either or, but and. Research shows that sustainable businesses have 2.5 times higher chances to be successful than those that aren't. The pandemic has definitely raised the need for change to a new level, and organizations can definitely emerge stronger by embracing it in ways that ensures that it benefits all stakeholders, customers, people, shareholders, partners, and communities. After all, like the American physician Mark Heyman said, the power of community to create health is far greater than any physician clinic or hospital.